Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have another early impression, and very sad because it's one of the last videos of the year. We're coming down to the end of 2022, which has been a brilliant year for me. It's been the first year that this channel, my little small channel that I won't say took off, but far exceeded my expectations on, what I expected when all I did was put my phone up there and press play and kind of record my thoughts, if you will, recording my journey and the things that I try. And this video is kind of no different. It is the first time I've given a full wear. I have worn this to bed once before, but this is the first full wear of Francesca Bianchi, and this is the Lover's Tale. And before we get into this, I have to say a big thank you to Nissan from, I believe he's in Canada. He sent me these beautiful samples, very kind, generous amounts. I think these are maybe 3 or 4 mils, maybe even 5, I don't know. But they're a very generous amount of fragrance that he sent me. And he sent me amazing fragrances I have not had a chance to talk about on my channel, or he hasn't heard me talk about on the channel yet. And he's been spot on with stuff that he sent me. And I see a lot of people, big name reviewers, who, I won't really name, but they always seem to be doing their videos for money. Give me money and I will try to be able to buy more fragrances. Send me fragrances, brands, and I'll be able to talk about them on the channel, is all I hear from the big name reviewers. I'm talking about the reviewers with 50,000, 70,000, 100,000, hundreds of thousands of subs. They're not paying for those bottles that they get. And what's been so beautiful about this first year for me, a beautiful year 2022 has been, is I never did that. I just kind of turned on the camera and shared my thoughts and connected with you guys on kind of a personal and emotional level. And I think that the real perfume lovers kind of picked up on the fact that I was not bullshitting. I was just putting my thoughts out there. And stuff like this just continued to arrive. And this is all I need. I mean, a full bottle would be great if a brand just sends you something, but honestly, this is more than enough for somebody like me who gets to now I get to put my thoughts out there on a fragrance where before I never would. There's no way I would be able to talk about this because I wasn't just going to go blind buy all of her fragrances for the channel. I don't have that kind of money anyways. I do own one Francesca Bianchi fragrance. I have not done a full review on it yet. It's called Etruscan Water, and I like it. I don't love it. Would I buy this again? No, probably not. My taste is a little past this. I mean, this is nice for work or something where you're going to be around people you don't want to offend. But honestly, I've gotten to the point where I need a little bit more as a fragrance lover to get me going, to really excite me. And that is the case with many of her fragrances. They are strong likes, emphatic likes even. I would wear them happily, but I don't think I would spend my hard-earned money on her fragrances. This is what I've come down to from the couple that I've tried. And so obviously Etruscan Water, I know pretty well. And I did a video over the last couple months of a fragrance of hers called Under My Skin. And when I did the video, I said it reminded me a little bit of one of the classics, one of the all-time classic Animalic, musky chypre fragrances, civet fragrances, and that is Jean de Prez Bala Versailles. This is the Pure Parfum, and this is beautiful. This I do have a video on. This was Michael Jackson's signature scent, and there's a lot of sexual tension in this. And I said when I tried Under My Skin, I said Under My Skin is probably my new favorite Francesca Bianchi. I like it more than Etruscan Water. Now that I'm trying the Lover's Tale, I think I'm going to say the same thing. The Lover's Tale is my new favorite Francesca Bianchi, and I'll tell you why. So let's talk about the fragrance first and what I get from it. So first, let's read the little blurb. Actually, my computer is tied to my work's network, and when I search for Francesca Bianchi's website, it blocks it. It's a prohibited website. So I had to kind of do like a roundabout way of getting this information. But here is, according to Base Notes, a little blurb about the fragrance. It says, "This is a story about a lover's secret encounter. Rich in natural raw materials, jasmine and leather are the protagonists of this perfume. The opening evokes the sparkling mood of the very moment they meet. Attraction and romance then trap the lovers, and a narcotic jasmine softened by a powdery rose recreates this tension. Passion then takes over with a sophisticated leather developing on a chypre accord. So here's the notes according to Parfumo and base notes. They have bergamot, honey, mimosa, aldehydes in the top, Egyptian jasmine, Bulgarian rose, heliotrope, peach, and iris butter or orris butter in the heart. The base is leather, musk, castoreum, labdanum, sandalwood, vetiver, and oak moss. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what happens when you first spray. This is a, what is this? This is a 6-hour dry down. And this is about, I just sprayed this 30 minutes ago. So I've got the opening again to remind me, and I have the dry down. So let's talk about the fragrance. So when you first spray, if you watched my blind sniffing episode that I did yesterday, I did a live stream where I did the final 4 fragrances that Armando was very kind enough to send me. We had a lot of fun blind sniffing some fragrances. One of them I hated, and if you go watch the video, you'll see it very early on which one that was. And it's a very expensive fragrance, by the way. I despised it. And so it started bad, but it ended very, very good because the last fragrance I tried right here, number 8, was a fragrance from a spin-off of Roja Dove. And the fragrance, or the house's name, is called Pierre de Valais, I guess is how you pronounce it. Pierre, Develay, Pierre de Valais. And it was number 47. And number 47 reminded me very strongly, extremely strongly of this. And this is Roja's Great Britain, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite leather iris combinations. And the reason that I bring this up is yesterday, oh, I love this. Yesterday, when I tried number 8, I didn't know it was Pierre de Valais number 47, which lists Roja Dove as a perfumer, by the way. And Parfumo shows Great Britain. If you go watch when I was still blind to what it was, I said, man, this reminds me of Great Britain or Queer Canage, something in that DNA. And I really love that DNA. You know, Pierre de Valais number 47 was a dead ringer for Roja's Great Britain. And this whole brand, Pierre de Valais, I don't really know what's going on. It almost feels like Roja's just kind of doing slight changes to his fragrances and selling them again in different bottles, hoping that the really rich will just buy everything and they don't even care. Take one of everything. One of all Roja's, one of all of Pierre de Valais. I don't know why he's doing that, but it's probably... you probably don't need to own Pierre de Valais number 47 if you own Great Britain. You probably don't need to own Great Britain if you own Pierre de Valais number 47. But the reason I bring that up is if you go watch, you'll instantly notice that I picked up on one combination that is a pure love for me. If you've been following my channel, if you know my taste, you know that I have never wavered on this. One of my favorite combinations of notes when they combine together that creates something very special to my nose is iris and leather, okay? And this fragrance has that from the very beginning. From the first spray, you will pick up on this beautiful iris and leather, but it's a little bit different, okay? So A Lover's Tale is an iris leather, which I instantly liked. And it's a little different, though, than what you're thinking when you imagine just iris and leather and you imagine the fragrances that have that iris leather combination, because this uses Francesca Bianchi's orris butter, her famous orris butter. And I say it's famous because it kind of is. You know, when people think of Francesca Bianchi, the first thing that they think of is that orris concrete that she uses, or orris butter, or whatever that accord that she created with orris. And if you smell it, you will smell it in other creations that she has done. So for example, I mentioned Under My Skin, which is a beautiful fragrance. I really like it. There's an animalic sexual aspect to it, which you will find in many of her fragrances. She has a very sexual style to her perfumes, and the marketing reinforces that. And I understand sex sells, so I get it. You know, her fragrances, the front of them will have like a picture of her butt and jeans, or, you know, it's a very sexualized brand, which is fine. I get it. That's what sells. But I'm just focusing on the juice, just on the fragrance itself. And so, you know, doing that blind sniffing exercise yesterday really reminded me of just how much I love that combination. And what this one does is you will instantly notice that the front runner, the main notes to my nose, are the orris butter or orris concrete or whatever you want to call it, and leather from the very get-go. That's the main star of the show, which is two of my favorite notes. You cannot go wrong there. Animalic, leathery, orris butter, irisy fragrances are huge wins for me. And this is one such fragrance, and it smells very high quality, but there's instantly a secondary note that kind of plays second fiddle, a very important second fiddle, and that is a fruity note. There's a very fruity note. And one thing that I learned from doing those blind sniffing live streams, there's 4 of them now. Actually, if you go to my live, if you just, when you find my channel or whatever, if you click on the lives, you'll be able to pull them all up. And one thing I learned about myself is my nose instantly will pick up on many fragrance notes. I'll pick up on oud, I'll pick up on amber, I'll pick up on orris, I'll pick up on woods, or honey, or whatever it is, but very rarely will I be able to hone in on my own on fruity notes. For some reason, fruity notes just avoid my nose until I read about them, and then I smell them. You know, it's one of those things. Here, I picked up on the fruit immediately. It was very evident. And what ends up happening is you get this very seductive, almost like this succulent, juicy peach. Okay, that's the fruit note, and it really does smell like juicy peach. And this is almost like you took a bite of a peach and the juices are like running down your chin. Okay, a little bit of a sexualized image, right? Imagine this seductive, sultry bite of a peach, and since this is the lover's tale, maybe imagine that your lover is taking the bite of that peach and you're watching them, and you see the juices running down their chin. And use your imagination. That's what I'm saying. That's the feeling of this peach note to me in the opening. Remember, her fragrances are very sexualized, and so you can't help but think of them in that context whenever you wear them and break them down. But what switches the script a little bit is this honey note, because the honey note that blends it, the honey note almost like attracts to this fruity peach, right? So the iris and the leather attract as the primary 2 notes, and the honey and the peach attract as the secondary 2 notes when you first spray in the opening, the first hour or so. And it's almost like the iris and leather create one molecule, and the peach and the honey create another molecule. And that peach and honey combination almost turns what you're smelling into this peach, almost like a fruit conserve, or I guess in the United States you would call it like a peach jelly, okay? Like a peach flavored jelly that you would put on a biscuit or something. That's the vibe that the honey gives it. It makes it much more resinous, jelly-like, and it has that texture to it, right? Fruit conserve texture. And in the background, always is that orris butter, which to me, I was thinking a lot about this, because one thing that I always get asked, or I hear people talking about in the community, is the difference between iris and orris butter. And I got to thinking, what does orris butter smell like in a Francesca Bianchi fragrance? What makes it different from the iris that someone like Chanel would use in the Les Exclusifs line? Or, you know, something along those lines. A cold iris, like, for example, take Serge Luton's Iris Silver Mist, that very cold, wet, rooty, powdery iris that you can think of, or think of the iris that Celine uses, right? There's many brands that are famous for iris. Dior's iris and Dior Homme. Many brands are famous for iris, but Francesca Bianchi's does smell different. And I got to thinking, is it the difference between this orris butter concrete thing, whatever you want to call it, and an iris? So I tried to, from memory, I tried to remember some of the other fragrances that I've worn from her, and I came up with an idea that hit me as a good way to describe this. And this may sound weird, but it's really the only thing I can think of. So have you ever baked like a dinner roll, right? And you put the dinner roll inside of the oven, right? And you kind of watch it, you watch it bloom, if you will. You watch the yeast in the roll grow and turn into this dinner roll, right? From a flat thing that you either make yourself by hand, or you pull it out of the freezer and you put it in the oven and you watch it kind of rise, right? The yeast rises and creates this dinner roll. And when you take the dinner roll out and you open it up, there's that steam that gets released, and you can smell kind of the warmth and the freshness of the bread, right? And the way that the orris butter works, not that it necessarily smells like a dinner roll, but I want you to imagine the texture of that dinner roll. Imagine how it kind of rises and fills in all of the, like if there were gaps, if there were little holes, if you were looking at a, if you were looking at a brick or something and you needed to take some mortar and fill in the gaps, right? And the mortar just kind of covers all that over, right? That's what the orris butter or orris concrete feels like in this fragrance. It feels like it rises, and it feels like it kind of, it just flows over all of the little cracks, all of the little holes in her fragrances. It covers everything in, and it's not just the Lover's Tale. It's all of her fragrances. They all have this risen orris butter concrete, and concrete is a good word. I just basically said dinner roll, and we're talking about butter, and that just came to me. Don't ask me why, but not that the two are related in any ways. But imagine that fresh, warm smell. See, the difference between the orris butter that I get in Francesca Bianchi's fragrances and the cold iris that you'll get in something like Iris Silver Mist, which is a masterpiece in its own right. I have a sample. I want to do a video on it soon. That's thanks to Rachel. She was very kind to send me stuff. That's what I'm talking about. People in the community are absolutely amazing. You do not have to be some sponsored YouTuber to give your honest opinion on something like this. And, the difference is that warmth. Imagine you take the roll out of the oven and you get that warmth, right? You open it up, the steam comes out, the bread is warm, but it's risen, right? It's almost like it's fluffy and it's risen. That's what the orris butter that Francesca Bianchi uses feels like to me. It's really the only way I can think of that really describes it. It fills the space. It fills the space in her fragrances. So even though she may not be the best blender, and I don't think she is, even though she may use good quality ingredients, and I think they're okay, I don't think they're the best quality ingredients, she's created this accord that gives her a little bit of a handicap, because it's such a beautiful accord. Honestly, it is. I mean, I have to admit, even though I will not run out and go buy her perfumes again, I think Etruscan Water was a one-off. Persolae has actually sold me on this. He did a video with her one day years ago, and he said that this reminds him of Azuré by Estee Lauder. And I went, holy shit, that's like my favorite leather chypre of all time. One of them. And I actually did a ranked leather chypre video. You can go check that out under my This Is Not a Top 10 ranked videos. But I was like, holy shit, Azuré. And I ran out and bought this. And I was like, no, Azuré just whips this into oblivion. Vintage Azuré, anyways. This is still good, but it has, so imagine the orris butter giving her that handicap, right? And kind of papering everything over. That's what it feels like here, but my favorite notes aren't used here, or they're not used as well, I should say. In a lover's tale, we have leather, we have labdanum, we have castoreum, uh, 3 of my favorite notes right there, and honey, 4, big 4 notes for me. And then of course vetiver, I'm turning into a vetiver lover. I love oak moss and stuff like that. But it fills in the holes. It gives her a handicap. And so the reason that this is my favorite Francesca Bianchi so far is it's an animalic leather. The castoreum keeps it interesting. And you might look at this and go, ooh, but what about the Egyptian jasmine and the mimosa and the Bulgarian rose? And they are there. And in fact, they give off this powder. The mimosa, especially, I think, in jasmine, gives off a slightly powdery. Jasmine can sometimes feel somewhat honeyed, like a honeyed white floral. And I think that blends with the actual honey that's being used here. And if you go watch my early impression yesterday of a fragrance from Fragrance Du Bois called Heritage that I did, that I hated, I despised it. That was one of the worst smelling jasmines I've ever smelled in my life, ever, of all time. And it's 600 pounds is what makes it even more crazy. Anyways, I hated that. This is a jasmine that I really like. This. The Lover's Tale uses jasmine in kind of a secondary aspect, maybe even a third dairy aspect, or whatever you want to call it. But it's nowhere near the front of the line. It's probably not even in the middle of the line. I would say I would probably pick up more on that Bulgarian rose than anything else. I mean, this is a lover's tale. How can you not have rose in a lover's tale, right? Rose has to be a part of it. And I think the little image that she drew on the front of the bottle is a heart with barbed wire around it. So maybe saying that the lovers are like either in a jail together, not literally, but like figuratively up here. They're like connected to each other, but they're also maybe victims of their own love, if you will. And then I think there's like a little bit of a fire coming out of the top of the heart is what I think that is. I mean, hell, maybe that's like a stem. I have no idea. But the Lover's Tale is a classic Francesca Bianchi fragrance to me. It smells so much like her DNA. And what makes it interesting, though, and as I was kind of evaluating this orris butter, orris concrete, whatever you want to call it, note, is I realized that it somehow, on top of that warmth and on top of the fact that it fills in all the holes, there also is a little bit of sweetness from this. And I don't know if it's kind of, it feels like it really is emanating from that orris butter that she uses. It really does feel like the orris butter is going to be the star in the show. I feel like in any Francesca Bianchi I smell now that I've smelled 3 big ones, Etruscan Water, you know, the Lover's Tale, which we're talking about today, and Under My Skin, they all have a little bit of sweetness coming from what feels like her little personal concoction of that orris that she created. That adds some likability to it. It adds a little bit of a, you know, maybe somebody who is not as versed in smelling some of the real dirty animalic fragrances can just pick this up and enjoy it. Yes, there's castoreum here, but it's not like you're going to smell the castoreum from the 70s and 80s. It's completely different than that. It's not like you're smelling vintage castoreum. And in fact, I would say the way she uses her animalics, yes, it's there. But if I was creating this scent, I would like the animalics to be amped up more. I want it dirtier. I want it to be more challenging. This is very niche in a way that is mass appealing, if that makes sense. The sweetness adds a likability factor to the general person. A fragrance lover who is in love with vintages like I am may smell this and go, I like it, which is exactly where I'm at. I'm smelling this and going, man, this is really good. Like, I like it, but am I motivated enough to go buy a bottle? You know, I bought 3 perfumes or 4. I have 4 fragrances on the way. All 4 of them are vintages from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. All 4 of them. And so there will be some unboxing soon. There should be some niche unboxings or niche fragrances we're going to be talking about soon as well. But this type of DNA is not going to move me to go run out and buy a bottle. And that may be a little bit of an issue for the house of Francesca Bianchi, because I'm now comprehending her DNA. I'm understanding kind of exactly what I'm going to get. There are obviously different fragrances highlight different aspects. There's still a couple other decants up here that I want to do early impressions on and talk about. But for me, this is mostly this orris butter with that honeyed fruity peach flower, you know, slightly powdery florals that play a role. They do. The powdery mimosa does definitely play a role. The honeyed jasmine plays a little bit of a backup role. The rose does come in, but it's really about that leather and the orris, 2 of my favorite combinations combined, and yet it just doesn't move me to buy it. It's just not going to move me to go run out and get a bottle. It's just not. I'll enjoy it. I'll wear my sample. There is one other thing. There's another flower that we didn't get a chance to talk about, and that's heliotrope. And heliotrope usually gives off this like Play-Doh-like vibe. And I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like heliotrope just naturally goes with her fragrances, because the orris butter that she uses gives off that creamy, you know, I know I said dinner roll, but I didn't necessarily mean like in smell. Although I guess there could be this thickness of bread like vibe from her orris butter as well. But, you know, the heliotrope, that Play-Doh-y aspect of heliotrope, that purple vibe, but like you're molding purple Play-Doh, mixes with her orris butter very well. And it's a natural 1-2 punch. It goes together with the texture of her perfume. And I guess if you are someone who has never smelled any niche fragrances, you're coming from the designer realm, Francesca Bianchi may be like a good initial niche fragrance house to explore, because they're likable. There's a little bit of sweetness there. The Animalics are there, but they're kind of hidden. You know, it's hidden underneath everything else. And like I said, the orris butter literally acts like a concrete and papers over everything. And so if there is something that's too challenging, it's kind of buried. You know, it's pushed down further. Whereas I want those elements dug up and brought to the surface. The way that she uses the orris and those kind of notes kind of pushes everything down, which depends on where you are in your journey. You know, you may love that. You may love how wearable this is. I just feel like I'm past this, and I'm not being snobbish at all. I'm just being 100% honest with you. I feel like I'm just past this type of niche perfumery at this point in my fragrance journey. I just don't know how else to say it. I hate that word, but I don't know how else to say it. Where I'm at, you know, about 10 years into this, is I just feel like I'm a little bit past it. I'm a little bit beyond where Francesca Bianchi's fragrances are. I enjoy them. I like them. I can sit here with an honest, you know, straight face and say, I think they are well made. I enjoy wearing this today. You know, I like the labdanum also has this very resinous quality, which naturally goes well with that orris butter. So you're kind of getting the idea of the fragrance. Animalic, leathery, resinous, orrisy, with that fruity honey conserve-like smell with the flowers and the dry down of vetiver and oak moss and sandalwood. Does it dry down into a chypre? Does it dry down into a chypre style, like it says in a chypre accord? I don't know about that. I don't know if I would have, you know, like I said, this is a 6.5 hour dry down now. I don't know if I would have smelled this and said, this is a chypre dry down. Not from the chypres that, you know, I would compare this to the old school chypres of past. I don't think I would. I understand what she's saying, because technically it does have all of the facets of a chypre. It's got the bergamot, it's got the labdanum, it's got the oak moss, and it's got peach. Peach is usually, you could have a fruity chypre, you could have a leathery chypre, you could have all these different types of chypres. This could be like a fruity, leathery chypre. I could totally see you saying that, but I guess there's something um, about that orris accord that she built, and again, you smell it over and over in her perfumes. That kind of hides that. You don't get the you don't get that mossy, mysterious dry down like you get in Mitsuko or Diaghilev or something like that. It's missing here. It feels like it's its own, like, you've got Orientals here, you've got Chypres here, and Francesca Bianchi's perfumes kind of sit somewhere in the middle. They're kind of in their own little spot. And she uses the words like attraction, narcotic, powdery, and there is all of that in her fragrances. It's just when you put the sum of their parts together and you present it here is the perfume. Is it going to move you enough to go buy a bottle? We're talking 30 ml bottles here. Not a lot of juice, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think they're extra concentrations. I just don't know if I would run out and buy the Lover's Tale. I enjoy wearing it. It's well made, but I don't see a full bottle in my future. There is one other thing though that I would like to point out. And I don't know if she does it on purpose or if it's just, something that naturally comes out of her, but she has this, I have to give her her dues, because she has this ability with ease, it seems like, to create this dreamy, sexually charged storyline and fragrance that go together. They really do. And I don't know if it's just one follows the other. I don't know if she sets out to create a fragrance that's, very sexualized and then writes the brief, or if she writes the brief first and then tries to create the perfume to match it. But whatever it is, she seems to just naturally create these type of perfumes. And, it is what it is. Sex sells, like I said. So I get it. I understand why she's doing it. There was one point in time where she was extremely hyped in the community, extremely hyped. A lot of people were talking about Francesca Bianchi fragrances, and I think some of that hype has died off a little bit. And I can see why. I mean, it's almost like, I hate saying this, but it's almost like if you smelled one Francesca Bianchi, you've smelled them all. Even though you haven't. I mean, if you've only smelled this, you have no clue what a Lover's Tale smells like. But I think you could kind of get in the ballpark, if that makes sense. You could, from listening to what I'm saying about it, you could almost construct a mental image of what it smells like. Like you almost know exactly what it smells like without ever smelling it, if that makes sense. And I found that with many modern fragrances, whereas with vintage, there are no way you could ever expect to smell what Yatagan smells like, or Antaeus, or Koros. There's no way you could ever expect to smell what Furio, or Leonard Porhomme, or Boss Number One, or those fragrances are so unique and different, and they each kind of seem to have so much time and effort spent. Even if you take the house of Hugo Boss, the first 3 fragrances they put out, Hugo Boss Number One in 85, Boss Sport a year or 2 later, and then Boss Spirit in 89, are all just completely different. They don't have this DNA. They're not all using the same molecules over and over and over again from these oil houses and just kind of changing little things here and there and coming up with a cool little blurb, and that's it. That's my reasoning behind saying that this doesn't move me. There's so much vintage fragrance out there. I mean, if you go try and just try to go buy vintage perfume, you will just run into a wall of fragrance. There's so much vintage fragrance out there to learn and explore. And I feel like I'm just never let down if I go buy a vintage bottle of Wall Street, or, whatever it is. I mean, pick your brand, pick whatever you want. I mean, there's so much vintage fragrances out there to explore. It's hard to want to spend hard-earned dollars when you have a limited budget on stuff like this. It really is. It's one of those great, I've experienced it. I get to talk about it on the channel. My thoughts are out there, but it wouldn't move me to go buy a bottle. Because of that similarity, there really is this similarity, and I've found that in other houses as well. You know, I talked about it with some of the Rojas, how in that Middle Eastern line the bases all seem the same. They just kind of change a couple things around here and there, and here you go, a whole new $500 fragrance. And so, one thing you'll learn about me if you're new to the channel is that I will go everywhere. I'll talk about indie, I'll talk about niche, I'll talk about designer, I'll talk about a $7 fragrance, I'll talk about a $2,500 fragrance. I don't care. I will talk about pretty much anything in the fragrance world, but my honest thought is I would not be moved to buy this. I would not be moved to buy, I don't think, this. Now, maybe the next one I talk about, a Black Knight or whatever it is, will move me differently, but from what I'm smelling and what it feels like I'm starting to really understand that DNA, I don't think it's moving me to want to make a purchase. So that's my thoughts. Let me know if you think differently. If you love The Lover's Tale, if you have some experience with Francesca Bianchi fragrances, let me know. I think, you know, for me, if I was going to go this route, I honestly think she has some heavy competition from the House of Papillon. I much more respect Liz Moore's and what she does at the House of Papillon than Francesca Bianchi from what I've smelled. There are some, you know, irisy, orrisy fragrances that Liz Moore's does. Like, for example, that fragrance she made for her daughter's wedding, Hera. I would wear that. Seriously, it was amazing, stunning iris in that fragrance. And that moved me more than this. That was different enough where I would rather go buy something like that, or Tobacco Rose, or, you know, something like that from Papillon. So Francesca Bianchi, if you just look at it in a bubble, it seems fine. You know, the ingredients seem high quality, the blending is okay, you know, her stories and her concepts are interesting to some extent, and, you know, they're nice. I enjoy wearing it. But when you factor in all these other external factors, whether you could go take that money and go buy vintage, or whether you could take that and go put it at a competing niche brand like Papillon, I'm finding that Francesca Bianchi just falls short. That's it. That's the most succinct way that I can put my thoughts. So let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I love seeing your faces in the comments below. We only have one day left in 2022, so hopefully we'll do one more video or live stream or something tomorrow, New Year's Eve celebration. But I have truly enjoyed spending this year with you guys. It's been not something I ever expected, but I'm loving it. And I love the interaction. I love the community we've built in our little fragrance town. All of you citizens of our little fragrance town, I'm blessed to have you all here. I learn more from you than you do from me, so please do continue to leave the comments, and I love reading your thoughts. I try to respond to every single one, and so far I've been able to do that. The comments are starting to pick up, which makes me very happy. But yes, thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers, guys, and hopefully see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye-bye.